All right, guys, we are back here at altitude adjustment and some big things have been happening on the job site. So today I'm gonna walk you through our insulation strategies, some of our air sealing strategies, our finished basement floor, which is happening right now, and we'll get a little update on the exterior. So let's get going.
Altitude Adjustment, a Build Original series, is brought to you by Builders FirstSource, Delta Millworks, Huber Engineered Woods, Hella, and SharkBite.
All right, we're here in the master bedroom and we're gonna start with the insulation. Originally, our insulation strategy on all of our exterior walls was going to be 2 inches of closed cell foam with a net and blow fiberglass over the top of it. Now, these homeowners have been up to this house during construction and have really experienced the wind that we get that comes off of the lake. There's a little bit of a canyon below us. The wind kind of cuts across the lake and comes up the canyon, and it happens to get incredibly windy up here. Sound from the outside to inside was a big priority for them, and they really wanted to make sure they had like the highest R value that they possibly could anyways. So we transferred kind of our insulation strategy to do a full cavity closed cell spray foam. The original intent was 2 inches so that we could target and eliminate that condensation point that happens within the wall. This client really wanted to upgrade it, so we decided to go with a full closed cell cavity. We did that on all of our exterior walls. If you see over here, this is just the same throughout the entire house. We also chose to do it in the ceilings. And in some cases, like the ceiling that is directly above us right now, this ceiling required 7 inches of closed cell spray foam. Biggest reason is because this whole ceiling is built with 2x10s, just in this small vaulted area here on the end. So within that 9.5 inches, I don't have enough room to get the R value that I need by using any other product. So the foam made the most sense in these ceilings, especially in our family room where we have those big I-joist vaulted ceilings. We had no choice but to do closed cell there. So because I would guess about 50% of the house has ceilings like that, where we couldn't meet our R value without closed cell, we decided to just do the entire house. It's huge because the insulation contractor can come through and install all of this in a matter of, 2 weeks, show up every day, get it done and be on their way. And we can move right to the next trade in the job site. We chose not to do continuous exterior insulation here. The architect never planned for it. There weren't any structural details that had accounted for it. So adding it at the time during construction would have been incredibly challenging. So we went with this method instead, which honestly, I'm really happy with and it's turned out great. But you'll notice some batt insulation behind me and throughout this entire house. And it is very common. Our kind of standard for our company is to do a sound insulation around all bathrooms, powder bathrooms. You don't want to be sitting in the bathroom and feel like you can hear people outside of the door talking. And in this case, the homeowner decided to do all the bedrooms. So you'll notice behind us here, we actually have a rock wool, and we had originally spec'd out the safe and sound insulation from rock wool. That is more of a residential product. And when our installers showed up to do this insulation, they rolled up with some different bags that weren't safe and sound. So this is actually AFB, which is acoustic fire bats. They're a little more of a commercial product. So I'll show you over here on this bathroom surround. Same thing as safe and sound. It's just a bat insulation that is purely made for sound. Now the benefit of rock wool is it is fire resistant, which is fabulous. And it's just a really great product to work with. We're not dealing with fiberglass. And it's really, really good at eliminating noise. Even in a house like this where we still have like doors that are wide open, it has reduced the sound transfer from space to space drastically. So this happens to be the toilet room and the master bath. And then we have the whole master bedroom. You'll see behind me, this wall is actually the separation between his closet and the laundry room. And then we did her closet in the laundry room, his closet in the hallway. So basically their master suite is a big bubble, which is fantastic. So if one of them wanted to come in and go to bed, but the other wanted to stay out and party with their friends, You're not worried about that sound. So that's kind of where we're at with insulation, and we have 90% of it done right now. The basement is going to get a few areas of net and blow insulation. Short of that, our insulation is done, and they'll come back and do that once our basement floor is done. But you are probably noticing some interesting products in the bedroom. And I want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing here. So if you remember in one of our last episodes, we talked about our altitude control technology system, our oxygen system. And one of the things we have to take into account with that system in these bedrooms is really good air sealing. So you'll notice, like, as you're coming through this room, especially on this exterior wall, we're installing this Siga Myrex product. This is going to get stapled with like a hammer tacker to the wall, and then they're gonna seal up all of these penetrations. So any light boxes, we've got a thermostat wire that's coming out over here. You really, really wanna seal this stuff nice and tight and make sure that we're kind of eliminating any and all air leakage that could happen from this room into the next room. So I'm gonna grab this tape. I'm gonna show you a couple more details that we have that we will be doing as we come through. So this first tape is the twinette. It is perfect width for you to be able to stick it to the studs. It has a double release, so we can stick it to the stud and cut it, and then peel the back off, and that'll allow us to stick the Myrex down to the tape, creating a really, really good seal. So I suggest using this at all your starting points. Along your bottom plate is perfect for this. And then we want to make sure that we use this. This is going to become incredibly helpful when we do it on the ceiling, because all this Myrex will be in one continuous kind of barrier that goes from the walls up and across the whole ceiling. So we're just creating a bubble around the room. So as we put the next layer of Myrex over the top, we'll use this Risson. I might be pronouncing that wrong, but that's how we're going to go with it today. We're going to use this tape to seal the joint between the top piece and the bottom piece, just to make sure it's nice and tight. And this is a 6-inch version. And we use the exact same tape around all of the outlet boxes and switch boxes, and even that thermostat wire behind us, just to eliminate like any possible little place that air could leak through. And then when we get up to that ceiling transition, we'll use that 6-inch tape to seal the joint between the ceiling Myrex and the wall Myrex. We'll just tape that nice and tight. And then that's where this comes into play incredibly handy. So the idea behind this on the ceiling is we're gonna take this double-sided tape and we're gonna stick it along the bottom side of all the trusses and all the joists. We're not gonna peel the release backer yet, but we're gonna get it from top to bottom across every piece of the ceiling member. Then as the guys come through on the scaffolding, they can hold the rolls of the Myrex up, peel the release tape on the first one, stick it on, move to the next one. Our biggest goal is we wanna keep this like nice and tight and straight, like you see on the walls here. Once we start to get like wrinkles and creases in it, it becomes a bit of a challenge for the drywall crew. We're not trying to make their lives more challenging. We really want this to be like nothing is behind the drywall and they can just go right over the top of it. But we need to make sure we're keeping it nice and tight like we did here. So this helps a ton as you go through on the ceilings. The last thing that we're gonna do in this case is we're actually gonna take the big 6-inch version of the Risson and do kind of a seam tape around the bottom plate. So we'll take this tape and we'll go up the wall a little bit and down and across our floor a little bit. So that'll kind of be our very last step here. You're probably noticing a bunch of construction adhesive on the floor. We had some subfloor products that we had put down that failed a little bit and we had to pull them up. So we're having to go through, clean it up and put new product down, but stuff happens. You just figure it out. So we'll come through, scrape this off, make sure it's nice and tight before we put this on. And then the crew can come through and install that new subfloor product right on top of the gypcrete, and it'll cover that seam. We just have a really, really good sealed room. So this is gonna happen in both of the bedrooms. The other bedroom, if you remember, is just prepped for a future oxygen system. This one actually is going to have it installed. So we'll make sure that both rooms are nice and tight and sealed like that in the event that the homeowners add the final system to the other bedroom. It's all good to go. But this will take maybe, I don't know, a day to do both bedrooms. It installs really quickly. This wall behind us, we installed right before we started filming, and it probably took us 10 minutes even to go through and seal up all the outlet boxes. The other thing you could think about doing is after this is installed, we could pull the rock wool out and foam behind these just as like an extra precaution, but I have a feeling this room's gonna be nice and tight, so not too worried about it. I wanna walk you over to the bar. We have some cool stuff that I can show you in the bar with our insulation and some of the things that we really had to think about ahead of drywall, making sure that our pocketing doors work in the future. So let's walk over there and check that out. And let's go downstairs and check out our finished basement floor getting done. So down here in the bar and in the family room, but there's a bunch of guys working over there right now. So we have some unique stuff happening. We have these big, huge pocketing stacking sliders, and they pocket all the way back into this wall up against this back piece of wood here. So as our insulation crews are coming through and spraying insulation, oftentimes they don't understand all of the construction details that are happening. And it's our job to make sure that we explain what we're having them work on and why we need it a certain way. So they came through and sprayed all this foam in this back wall cavity here, but they oversprayed the studs a bit, which is very common. And usually they'll go through and grind them nice and flat to the studs. But in this case, they just kind of assumed like it's in the middle of a double wall. We don't need to grind it down. But we actually do, because when this door pockets all the way in, if our foam insulation is sticking out past all of these studs, the door is actually going to hit and rub on this foam. So you want to take your time and put your hand back there and kind of just make sure that the finished product on the outside of the door isn't rubbing on this insulation in the back here. And our guys will come through and start to like clean it up. But the other thing we want to think about too is now is the only time that we have access to these pockets. So you can see all back inside this one, there's a bunch of like debris, right? Cutoffs from the foam, sawdust, all kinds of stuff. We want to make sure that we get that all cleaned out. So two things that our team is working on today is coming through and shaving this closed cell insulation down nice and tight to the studs so that the door can slide right in. They're also coming through and removing, you can see all this red tape, the red protective tape that Pella puts on all of the doors when they ship them out. Our team is coming through and taking that off because it comes all the way back in here into the wall pocket. And once this drywall's up, you're not getting back there very easily. So the guys are gonna come through, cut all this nice and flat, peel all this tape, and then the very last thing they're gonna do is just take a shop vac, clean out that track really, really good, clean out any debris that would be in there around the track, and just make sure everything looks nice and tight. The doors are opening and closing really easily, and we don't have anything that's like rubbing on the door or disrupting. And that just happens when we have these like big pocketing stacking sliders, and we have the exact same thing in the family room. We just want to make sure that we're looking at this and checking this, because the second the drywall's put up, there's no getting in there again. So the guys are also going to come through before we start hanging drywall and just clean and vacuum out pretty much all of our wall cavities. It gets dirty, it gets dusty, and you want to clean that stuff out. So it's just a good idea to do that. And then last, this is kind of our separation wall between the party pad or the bar and the rest of the house. This space is absolutely going to get used all the time, and they're going to have a great time in here. But there's also going to be times when people are going to want to be in the bedroom sleeping when people are still in here partying. So we chose to come through and do the same rock wool sound insulation on this separation wall that separates the bar from the house. And then we have two big steel doors here, which are not going to be very sound resistant, but we can kind of go through and just chalk these wall cavities filled with insulation to try and help. And then, like I told you, underneath this room is where our bunk room is. So we'll have 10 bunk beds down there for people to sleep in when they're here. And we want to make sure that if people want to go to bed while people are still up here partying, we don't have a lot of noise transfer. So a few things we did. This floor still has 1.5 inches of gypcrete. So this has the same radiant heat tubing and concrete that the rest of the house has. And then underneath we have Advantech X Factor. And then we have our floor joists. Within that floor joist cavity, we're gonna net the bottom of the floor joist and spray fiberglass insulation in that entire cavity. And then on the bottom side of the floor joist, we're actually gonna install what's called an RC channel. It's a metal, almost like a commercial product, a metal channel that'll get attached to the bottom side of the floor joist. And then the drywall will attach to that. We're using a quiet rock instead of a traditional drywall. So it's all these little bits and pieces and little details that kind of go together to create this really amazing assembly. And they're all things that you can add to any house that you're building at any point in time. So these are good strategies that you can use from an insulation and drywall perspective to help kind of manage the sound in the house. So we're gonna go downstairs. I wanna show you guys what we're doing with the basement floor. I'm really happy that we're working on it right now, but I'm also incredibly nervous that the finished floor is going in at this stage. So let's go check it out. So we've actually had this crew over here on the job site now for about a week or so, and they have been grinding our floor. The entire basement of this house is a acid stained concrete floor. So the crew has come through, a crew from Rad Concrete Coatings has come through and they cut all of the concrete. So that's like a first pass with the grinder. And then they come through and grind it down like really nice and smooth. A few things I love about this is if you have a concrete mixture that has some aggregate in it, like you can see places in this floor where you start to see the rocks that come through it, and it's really beautiful. I actually really, really like that a lot. And as they put the final color on it, it's gonna make those different areas stand out and kind of pop. One of the things that we always say about concrete is there's two types of concrete, one that has cracked and one that will crack. There is no non-cracking concrete. So you'll notice some cracks in the floor across the basement, and that is to be expected. As long as they're not cracking and separating and giving us a big gap, this is all normal. And I would be willing to bet if we went back into videos, 99% of these cracks happened before the end of the day that it was poured. It's a combination of what the weather is doing that day, what's the temperature outside, how quick is it curing, what additives were put into it. There's just so many things that go into play. And even in a floor like this, where we have insulation underneath, vapor barrier, radiant heat tubing on wire mesh, rebar mat in it, you still get cracks. So do not expect that you're gonna build a home and not have a cracked basement floor. But one of the things that's really cool about doing like a polished or a stained concrete floor is this becomes part of the look, and it actually is really beautiful. So these guys have come through and ground some of these cracks out a little bigger than they were before because they have a few things they can put in them. So if we walk over here a little bit closer, you'll notice some areas that they've already come through and patched. Some of them they'll patch, some of them they'll leave. It just kind of depends. And some of these cracks too might have been really thin cracks that happened at the surface. And as they started grinding down more, they disappeared. That's all cool. That's all part of the story. And they do have the ability to go through and they have a joint filler or a joint compound that they can come in and put into all these cracks. They'll also put it into all of our saw cut lines that you see across the basement, which just makes it nice and smooth. You can choose not to put that in if you like the way it looks. Some people do, but they make it in different colors. So in our case, like we're doing a dark stained, acid stained floor. We don't want a light gray concrete filler. So they'll be using some different colors on the floor to make these like really minimal, but still visible and part of the charm, which is cool. But I'm excited about this because I think this aggregate has actually turned out really pretty and I really enjoy the look of it. The reason we're doing this now is because once drywall's in and baseboards go down, grinding this concrete floor is not very easily done. It's also not little equipment. So they're using dust collection on all of their machines itself. They have these big floor grinders that you'll see across the basement over here. And that's what they're using throughout this whole basement. And they'll use different levels of grit to get to different levels within the concrete. One of the things they mentioned as they started doing the grinding here was that this concrete was incredibly dense. So it was taking them a little longer to get to the preferred result than they had hoped. So they were putting water down. They have all these tips and tricks that they can do to make it really neat. And then you'll start to see they are coming through, sweeping all the material up out of the basement, but they're also going through all of our saw cut joints and cleaning out the cracks with a tool to get everything out of it so that they can use their joint compound filler to come through and fill all of these and make them nice and smooth and pretty. So once this floor is done, we'll actually come through and cover this entire basement with 1/4 inch cardboard. You don't want to tape ram board or use the floor protection that has like a sticky back to it on a stained concrete floor, especially if it's going to be left for 4 or 5 months like this one would be. It could damage the stain. So we're going to put 1/4 inch sheets of cardboard across the whole basement, and then we'll tape ram board over the top of that just to protect it. When all is said and done, carpentry's finished, we're ready to pull all of that up to do kind of our final clean. These guys will come back with a big floor buffer and come through and kind of shine this floor up and make it look great again. But the buffer can get really close to the baseboards without destroying them, whereas the grinder just can't. It doesn't have that ability. So we want to do all the grinding and staining and polishing ahead of drywall and baseboard. And this is cool. So our concrete company, we kind of had an inspo photo of what we wanted this floor to look like. And here's the thing with stained concrete or acid washed concrete, or even, we recently did one that was in a metallic coat concrete. We can all see beautiful photos online and all see samples. And when you go to do the whole space, you need to have some flexibility in the way of thinking and receiving what this product's going to look like, because your concrete floor in your house might do something very different than the concrete floor here. We did 4 samples here, and we're actually not using any of these. We're doing a little bit of combination of both, but we did 4 samples, and what we did was 2 different colors, and we did 1 coat of the color and 2 coats of the color, and these both have a satin finish on them. So our crew came through, ground this floor down. We used a sienna brown for 2 of them, and then this is the walnut. And I really think this is beautiful. If you look at it when the light hits it, like you can see some darker areas, you can see the grain and like the rocks and the concrete start to pop. It's a really beautiful floor. The homeowner came over and took a look at it and said, like, I want a mix of the 2, and I want it to be very like just natural looking. So the concrete crew is actually going to do a 5th sample for us back in our mechanical room, and they're going to mix the 2 stains and do 1 whole room of the finish that the homeowner is looking for. It'll be way easier to see in a big space. A little small 2 foot by 3 foot sample is tricky, but this is all we had to work with because this stain is not going to come out of the concrete, and we only had a certain area underneath a set of cabinets to hide these samples. So these samples will forever be here. If the homeowner ever came through and tore all these cabinets out, they're going to be underneath it. The crew will come through and grind this one time and do their whole stain process across everything, but you're still gonna see these 4 boxes forever underneath the cabinets. But in this case, the homeowners know they have cabinetry here. It's not something they're worried about. But it is tricky. It's tricky to know that you're doing a completely finished floor surface at this stage in a build and knowing that you have to protect it through the end. So it's really, really good to remember to put in a budget in your contract to cover floor protection. And it's always cheaper to buy a ton of floor protection over and over again than it is to redo the floor. So don't forget that. One last thing I want to show you. So we're going to walk over here in this end bedroom that's kind of interesting. So our service, our main electrical service for the house is on the opposite side of this wall. So we have a big 400 amp in the main meter on the outside of this wall. We also have a bunch of other equipment for our AAV and our solar system. But before we blew insulation into here, you could see the big service wires, and you can still kind of see the trace of the service wires that are in here. He has a little concern in his mind about the electrical transfer of power that's moving through these service wires into whoever is sleeping here, because this is the headboard wall. So he called me the other day and said, hey, I know I'm crazy. I know you're gonna think I'm nuts, but I want you to hang this fabric on the wall before you put the drywall up. So he purchased an EMF fabric. It's a Faraday fabric. So if you've ever heard of someone talk about like a Faraday bag or Faraday bunker, these are, we'll use the bag for example. A Faraday bag is a bag that will protect whatever's in it from an EMF. So if there were a large, and I'm going to butcher this because I'm a builder, not a specialist in this field, but if there are a large like electromagnetic event, if you had a sat phone that was in a Faraday bag, it would be protected. So in the homeowner's mind, if we put Faraday fabric up on this side of the wall, he feels like the person sleeping in this bed is a little more protected from the amount of power that could be running through this wall. It was very inexpensive. It wasn't a huge price, but we'll just cover this one particular wall. We have it here. We'll get it up before drywall, and as long as it makes him feel better, that's what makes us happy. So we're gonna run outside. I wanna just give you guys a quick update. The Tesla roof is done. I have some thoughts on the Tesla roof. I have some opinions. Our siding and our stone is cruising, and these stonemasons are just absolute artisans. It is so beautiful. And our front door structure started to get installed. So let's go outside. I'll give you a quick peek of an update out there, and then you're gonna have to stay tuned to see more of the amazing details that are coming so soon on this project. Let's go outside. I want to show you the outside of this house because these guys are doing some really amazing things out here. You know, one of the things I've realized with this particular stone install is this is not something that everybody can do. This takes an immense amount of skill and talent and patience. And these guys are truly artisans. It is just so beautiful. So not every one of these rocks fits together perfectly. And these guys are cutting and installing every single one of these rocks so nice and tight and perfectly. The other thing that makes this incredibly tricky is the massive amounts of different sizes of stones that we have in here. It really does take patience. Like, this is not a quick masonry job. This takes a lot of time. These guys are perfectly cutting them. It is beautiful, and I can't say enough about it. And it's just amazing to see how nice and neat and how much care and attention to detail they put into this. It's such a beautiful install. And this is exactly what the homeowners are going for. For some people, it does just look like a big white wall, and it might not be your style, but it is absolutely their style, and they love it, and it makes me so happy. So we're missing the sill. The crew will come through and install the sill. They're probably just starting to do that now. And it'll come up to this nice metal kind of bracket L channel that we have, drip edge, that goes behind our siding, underneath, and out over the top of our stone sill. Our stone sill is gonna sit out about 1.5 or 2 inches in front of the face of this stone so that water can run off of it and go straight to the ground. It doesn't run across the face. This limestone sill is absolutely gonna take a bit of a beating if it has water dropping on it constantly. It will erode, it will start to age. If you don't like that, you can purchase different sills that are not made out of the limestone. But these homeowners actually really like that, which I think is great. And then just a quick peek at the siding. We've seen a ton of it, but it's beautiful to see all the headers and casing on these windows installed. We've got our doors installed over there. I just think it was such a smart idea to buy this material in a thicker, kind of more proud profile. It just turned out beautiful. And this Delta Millwork Sequoia is gorgeous. I'm just such a big fan of this product. I think it's so great. Last, I want to tell you how happy I am that our front entry door started showing up the other day. Now, this is a 9-piece structure. It is incredibly challenging and very difficult to install. This one piece alone weighed about 2,000 pounds. The reason we have one piece in and not the rest of them is we had to make some on-site adjustments. So when we got out here, realized the guys had measured this depth a little off. They were off 2 inches. So this is supposed to be 2 inches closer to the edge. But we came up with a solution, and they created these 2x2 metal channels that are gonna mount directly to the wall. And we will field weld the rest of the structure to those, and we'll paint it all on site. We're gonna do a full paint on site anyways to touch up anything that gets nicked or scratched or dinged when they're installing it. This is 3 solid walls of glass. Our entry door is 50 inches wide, full half round arch top, follows the half round of our big steel beam in front, and it's just so perfect. So Vision Makers out of Utah is building this for us, and they should have the rest of it installed next week, which is pretty cool. I wanna walk up top where you guys can kind of see the Tesla roof behind me. And I'm gonna give you just a very brief update and a few thoughts that I have. I told myself I was gonna hold judgment of the roof and the way it looked and how I felt about it until we were done. We are done now, and I'll give you my thoughts. Take this for what it's worth. The roof is beautiful, and I think it is really incredible that there's a product on the market that is a solar panel that is very seamless looking. It can match with all of these blank panels, and you truly can't tell unless you're looking at a drone shot which ones are solar and which ones are blanks. So I think that's amazing, and it really does give you a beautiful look. I am very happy with the snow retention, the snow fence. So those are the poles that you're seeing across the front here. This is something that we're required to have here in Utah, especially on a metal roof. This is gonna protect people walking down below from snow shedding off. If we were to get a really heavy or really big snowstorm and that snow shedded off the roof, it could kill you if it directly impacted you, depending on how much is up there. So this is all required. It is beautiful. I will give them that. I don't love the trim pieces, to be totally honest, on the Tesla roof. For the price tag and what this thing costs, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for this roof. It's okay. I think that for my homeowners, it's exactly what they wanted because they wanted solar in a neighborhood that didn't allow it, which is fantastic. But you know, if you were in a different neighborhood where you could use solar panels instead of a roof like this, I would probably point you in that direction. It's less expensive. Solar panels these days can be hidden and look great, and it's not that big of like an ugly eyesore as it used to be. The Tesla roof's just kind of okay, I guess, is my final thoughts on it. It's obviously not powered up. It's not up and running. We haven't got it connected to the span panels, and we can't physically see how it's interacting and keeping this home off grid all the time. I think that's an amazing thing. However, we could have got that same thing with solar panels if they would have let us. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents. I think the roof is great. I think it's beautiful. Would I spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on it? Absolutely not. But it is a really high quality roof. It is very beautiful. It has a really good intention. It's gonna function really well, especially as we link it to the span panels and get everything connected. But you have to take that for what it's worth. And if you wanna see it in person, drive by and check it out. It's a cool roof. It's just very, very expensive for what it is. And I will say that there are a few more manufacturers now that are putting solar shingles on the market. So just do your research and check that out, because you might find another option that is more affordable, that doesn't have the Tesla name on it, that can save you some money and still give you a very similar look. So that's the update on altitude adjustment, guys. There is so much stuff happening over here right now. Hopefully at our next episode, we're gonna be talking about drywall and drywall details. We'll have finished carpenters getting in here. We'll have our interior doors installed, and we should be craning and installing our landscaping on the back side of the house. So we need to bring a big crane in, lift these trees up and over the house, a bunch of pavers. We'll be getting our pool wrapped up and heading towards the end of this project. We're in like the last quarter of this build, and this is really when it starts to get really, really fun. So stick around for the next episode. You guys, you know you can find more content on social media at Stephanie Builds It. We'll see you next time on The Build Show.